So you've applied to hundreds of jobs. Maybe you've even gotten a few interviews, but none have turned into an offer. It's starting to feel kind of hopeless, like you're never going to find the right job for you. But here's the thing. You might be a little bit more responsible for those rejections than you might think. I know that sounds harsh, but stick with me. Job searches can feel random, like it's all about luck, timing, who you know. And while those factors absolutely do play a role, there's a lot of stuff that we can do to make our job search a little more in our favor. The hard truth is, the majority of rejections happen for qualified candidates because they don't know how to position themselves correctly for the role. But that's actually kind of a good thing because it means it's something we can fix. Today I'm going to show you how to take back control of the job search process and turn rejection into a tool for growth. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to take a little bit more control over the process by improving your approach, continually improving yourself as a candidate, and finally getting that job that you deserve. Hey everyone! If you're new here, I'm Marina. I'm an applied scientist at Twitch or Amazon. I'm a technical mentor at a machine learning bootcamp and a one-on-one career coach for people looking to break into the data science and machine learning world. I've also sat on hiring panels for major tech companies like Coursera and Amazon, so I've seen firsthand what makes candidates stand out. The first thing with job rejections is, of course, understanding and appreciating the emotional side of it. It can feel really bad when you get rejected from a role you know you were perfect for. Maybe you've already started envisioning yourself in the role, how your life would change, how you'd work with the team, the kind of projects you'd work on, where it could take you in the future. And finding out that that's not going to happen can be really painful. But the thing is, at this phase, I think it's really important to have kind of a healthy sense of detachment. It's really easy to think that everything would have gone exactly in the best possible way that you've envisioned, but it's equally possible that it wouldn't. It's a little bit corny, but I like to remember that nothing is either good or bad, it just is. It could be that that would have been the dream job for you, but it also could have been that the team actually wasn't a good fit or something better is coming down the road. Just keeping things in perspective can be really helpful to kind of manage the emotional up and downs of the process. The key thing is to not let rejection impact your mood and your behavior moving forward. So one really unfortunate thing that happens a lot is we get rejected and then we feel like there wasn't any point to putting in effort. So the next time we're filling out applications or preparing for an interview, we don't really give it our all because there's this nagging voice at the back of our head that says, why even bother? Because you didn't prepare, because you didn't give it your all, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where the next interview or the next application, you kind of phone it in and then you don't have the outcome that you want. You have to stay invested and keep trying. I know this is easier said than done, and it is completely understandable if you would need some support throughout that process. So whether that's talking to a friend, a counselor, reading a book on cognitive behavioral therapy, meditating, going for walks in nature, journaling, whatever it is for you, figure out something that can help you maintain that sense of emotional peace and stability that will allow you to keep going and stay positive next time, even after the 1,000th rejection. So sometimes when you're rejected, it really is for things outside of your control. It could be that the recruiter didn't really know what skills were actually required, or the interviewer was having an off day, or maybe the candidate pool was just super strong. But the thing is, I don't really think it's very helpful to focus on the things that truly are outside of your control, because you can't control them. And honestly, I've sat on a lot of hiring panels, and usually it's not the case where there were two candidates who are both pretty close and one just eked the other out. It's usually pretty obvious when someone is head and shoulders above the rest. Basically, what we need to do is change our approach to job applications and interview prep so that we make our own luck. There are essentially 2 points in the job search process where you can get rejected, either at the application phase or after an interview. Let's start with the application phase. So we often hear that applying to jobs is just a numbers game. You should just fill out applications for any job you could potentially get hired for, and that's that. Sometimes people even recommend using Gen AI tools to speed up the process. But I really disagree with this approach, especially using Gen AI tools. I would stay away from that completely. What I think you should do instead is a little bit of a combination of breadth and depth, depending on what has the highest expected return. So what you're first going to want to do is find the jobs that would either be really fun for you, or the jobs that you think you have a really great chance of getting. Spend a lot of time preparing the application materials or your cold reach out strategy, which we'll get to soon, for those jobs. Then, if you have a little bit of extra time at the end of the day or the week, sure, go ahead and spam your resume a little bit, but don't neglect spending sufficient time on the job applications that you think you actually could either be really good at or have a really good chance of getting. What we want to do is avoid the cycle of mindlessly sending out applications, getting rejected, and then falling into that downward spiral I talked about at the beginning, where we just assume we're going to get rejected no matter what, so why bother customizing our resume, and so on. Instead, what we want to do is constantly be iterating on and refining our resume, LinkedIn, GitHub, cold reach out approach, anything like that, until we're getting a rate of return that we think is reasonable. I would say for jobs you're qualified for, hopefully you'd be getting about a 10% response rate. I realize that's ambitious, but that's our goal. If you're not there yet, then that means there's probably something you can do to improve your resume, LinkedIn, GitHub, or strategy. For those in the data science and machine learning world, I plan to do a video on resumes for those fields soon, so make sure to subscribe. An even better strategy than applying to jobs through job boards is reaching out to people one-on-one. I know this is painful, but I promise you it is worth it. So it could be that you're reaching out to somebody who has a job posted, maybe they're a hiring manager, maybe they're a recruiter, or maybe it's somebody who just works for a company that you're really interested in. But what you're going to want to do is spend a good amount of time really researching the company, the role, the person you're reaching out to, and make sure that you have a very genuine connection with them, or at least as much as possible over a cold LinkedIn email, the very first time that you connect. So you might just be saying something like, "Hi, I saw this position, I have this background, I think I would be excellent at solving these problems because of these things in my previous experience, or I have these kind of recommendations for the product which you've used extensively and have some kind of deep insight about," that kind of thing. So you're going to want to spend a significant amount of time, at least 30 minutes, really preparing so that you have something deep to offer when you're reaching out to people. This is going to get you ignored a lot of the time, for sure, but you're going to get ignored a lot less than you will if you just send off an application into the ether. So while you might only be one of 1,000 people in the resume screening tool, you're probably going to be, one of a couple dozen max, hopefully less, who's reaching out to someone one-on-one, and your message is going to be the most well-crafted and the one that they decide to respond to. In both applications and cold reach outs, a really common mistake is focusing on how much you want the job because you would be really benefited by it and not how much you can benefit the company. So in general, in both our resume, cover letter, and cold reach out strategies, we're going to want to be focusing on how deeply we know the business problems of the job that we're applying for and how our skills can solve those problems and generate business value. So as you can see, this takes a lot of effort, and it's not something that we're going to be able to do by just spamming our resume or by just sending random emails to people on LinkedIn. So now you've ironed out your application materials and you have a solid networking strategy. You've started to get some interviews, but unfortunately they're not going as well as you'd like. What can we do in this case? So the first step here is to ask for feedback. Now, the recruiter's probably not going to want to give this to you. It could potentially open them up to legal issues, and so they're kind of incentivized to either not give you feedback or give you very general, vague feedback that's not super helpful. You still have to try, because if they do give you feedback, that can be invaluable. If they're not willing to give you feedback, that's not the end of the world either, though. We can kind of do our own feedback strategy by reverse engineering what happened in the interview. The first step here is immediately following every interview you do, write down what questions you were asked and what you responded. This is so important. If you don't write down those questions immediately afterwards, you're probably going to forget them, and then it's really hard to know how to improve in the future. Once you have this, you can spend some time either by yourself or ideally if you have someone you know who you respect in the field, maybe a mentor of some kind, review the questions and your answers, and find areas where you could have done better. So this involves obviously the technical side of things. Make sure that you had not just an okay, but a super, super awesome response to every question that you were asked on the technical side, but also things like the questions that you asked them. Were you able to fluently do that? How well did you answer behavioral questions? Do you feel like you communicated clearly? Were you saying lots of ums and, a little bit of pauses, or were you confident and able to engage as well as you potentially could? All of these things play a role. And what we're trying to do here is figure out how well you prepared for the interview and areas that maybe you didn't prepare as well as you could have, so that next time you come in so prepared that nobody else stands a chance. Once you have an idea of the areas where you feel like you didn't perform as well as you could, whether that be on the technical side of things or the delivery, then you know what to study. I think the best way to do this without a lot of stress is to have a consistent study schedule. I have a video on how I manage studying consistently with a full-time job, which I'll link in the description. And then the next step is to prepare for the interview like a crazy person. So when you get an interview next time, you don't want to have any situation where you're unprepared for what they're asking you, especially if you've been asked similar things in the past and you know better. I have another video on interview prep. It's kind of a little bit of an overkill system, but it works really well to feel confident, so I'll link that as well. The goal is that next time you come in so prepared that you absolutely knocked the technical questions out of the park, you sold your business value well, you made a strong connection between the skills that they need for this job and your past experience, and you know that you really gave 100%. In my opinion, this is also super helpful for feeling good about the job search process in the long term. First of all, This helps you have a stronger internal locus of control because you know that if you didn't get the job, it's not because you didn't try hard enough. It's not because of anything you could have done. It really is completely outside of your control. The other thing is the more you invest into preparing for interviews, the better you're going to get each time. You're learning skills that will probably be relevant to your job, which is just going to make you better, make it harder to lay you off, make it easier to find a new job in the future. It can only benefit you. Overall, the people I'm seeing be successful in the job market right now are the ones who are optimistic, determined, good at critically evaluating themselves in their areas of weakness, and really have not so much social fear, which I know is easier said than done. But having that ability to put yourself out there, contact people one-on-one, call recruiting agencies and see if they have anything, put up your network as much as possible. These things are the highest leverage tools that we have in a difficult job market. So that, combined with really good study skills and interview preparation, is the absolute best way to set yourself up for a success. If you want some tips on how to study consistently without hating your life and how to prepare for interviews like a maniac, go ahead and check the description. I'll link those videos below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.